PCCW Global is part of the HKT environment in Hong Kong, publicly traded ICT provider. Market cap today sitting at about 11 billion US dollars. Listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, over 17,000 employees, but the PCCW Global unit that I manage, which is responsible for the international connectivity of the business, generates about 1.1 billion US dollars, and we have a global network worldwide. First of all, we're focused on assuring that we have a global network backbone. The fiber network, which underpins also what we do globally on the IP transit environment and all the applications, particularly in the area of IP, VPN, and also in SD-WAN. And as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, PCCW Global is one of the first service providers to seek certification for MEF19 in the SD-WAN certification environment. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we acquired a company called Console Connect. And that Console Connect platform is really facilitating the connection of a software-defined fabric, which is underpinned by our global IP backbone. I think we're the only fabric in the world today that has a global footprint of its fabric that can generate and guarantee QoS for that fabric through the IP backbone which is there. And it's quite important for us to be continuing to drive our migration from a connectivity-style business to a technology-oriented business. We're focused on digitally automating innovation as far as we can go, generating global coverage, assuring service automation, also speed and security. And you can see in the middle that full technology stack. We aspire to the day that a global service operations center gets a call from a customer and says, we're able to handle a look at your connectivity, and we're also able to handle a look at your code, and to understand why is code and connectivity working together in order to deliver value to the end users. Ultimately, having scalable global connectivity together with any type of secured coverage that facilitates access to cloud and so on, particularly around automated capability, is where this business is headed globally. Not too long ago, ICT ecosystems were very similar. Physical networks were the key, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, but we as physical networks were disrupted. We were disrupted by what? First and foremost, by the introduction of software-based capability in the smartphone. In that mobile arena, the singular ecosystem that was originally introduced by Apple, leveraging the internet and later revolutionizing the digital ecosystem, particularly in the consumer space, created huge types of value. The operating system became the consumer economic and technical organizing platform. It was there both from a technical point of view, but also from the economics perspective, because what Apple as an operating system and Android later did was to create an economic incentive for apps developers to develop all of the capabilities. It is, in effect, the organizing platform. And what's happening now as a result of the trade war with the new Harmony operating system coming from Huawei will be an interesting event to see whether globally there can be some challenge. Again, an organizing commercial event of technical operating system and economic environment and how all of that works. Operating systems initially competed for positioning, and they created the economic environment for platform developers and device manufacturers and users, while networks became solely distribution channels. But not too far away, we're headed to this new ICT ecosystem, which is perhaps more relevant to the people in the world, which is going to be driven by IoT, enterprise, industrial applications, and so on, which are going to be approaching a situation where the World Wide Web as we know it, or internet access as we know it, because of the lack of defined QoS or security, will be too complex. And the business that many of you are doing in the room that is focused on MEF types of standards and capabilities, which has usually been point-to-point or point-to-multipoint within network environments, will start to look for how do we interoperate a large array of ICT communities while tackling for those areas of activities. There's going to be a few issues. Traffic complexity, first and foremost. The dynamic traffic variables, not just of duration, bandwidth sizes, which can be asymmetric from narrow band IoT to very broadband applications that will come later on in time. Various service types, perhaps multiple service types with multiple service providers in different locations. Often different destinations and different commercial terms if we want to be complicated. If we look today at IoT, and I sit also on the board of the Bridge Alliance in Asia, which focuses on mobility, I can tell you that IoT roaming activities are trying to be backed in to old-style roaming agreements. And the demand traffic profile that you see on the left-hand side of this slide will not allow that truly to happen. There's going to have to be a new way of thinking to focus on interoperability. The scale and complexity and the dynamic nature of today and tomorrow's services in that new industrial environment are going to be driven by vast amounts of data, AI, machine learning, and so on, and various automation to simplify various activities driven by so many more devices in so many different locations in use cases that manual procedures will not facilitate. And the commercial settlement associated with that is going to have to also address that same complexity. You can't have complexity on the left side and then create some sort of simplicity or even manual processes on the right side. And this is our challenge at the moment, that we're sitting often with some creative ideas downstream at the retail product level for enterprise and industries, but without thinking through all of the back-end chain, and ultimately ending up to multiple relationships that are handled manually at the back end. If we want to move from that left side, where telcos interact with large enterprises or with mobile network operators and various service providers in the middle for various forms of interaction, to the more complex environment that you see on the right, which is an ecosystem of users and suppliers being driven by platform-based economics, which has become the rage these days as the world goes through digital transformation. We in our industry are going to have to look at how we migrate from what exists on the linear process side with manual processes on the left, to non-linear opportunities for multiple dollars, but where many things are being handled in a much more automated format between all the factors in our industry. And so here at MEF, what can we do as a community? Well, first and foremost, when we look at what's shaping on the left-hand side, the critical applications that I discussed, the massive amounts, not just of IoT that I have there, but the massive data volume and the critical applications, which need to be fed on the right side by the cloud platforms, which are doing a vast amount of the processing that's necessary for all of the applications that are there. It's not just good enough that there be some sort of physical or manual API around there. In order to get to interoperability, in the manner in which Nan was describing in his slide before, there needs to be federation. And it's interesting that Nan and I are thinking alike. We did not coordinate our slides at all, and certainly, although Frederick, who's on the board of MEF, does share every now and then a few comments. But this unified operational framework at the top has to come together with an understanding of the wholesale settlement process and how that gets automated, together with the federated commercial framework. So as we move forward to these environments, we need certain requirements for interoperability, and we're moving there step by step. We did the NNIs in the old days. Now we went to SDN, and now we're creating these APIs so that we're starting to expose the back end to the front end, perhaps on a wholesale basis, or at least between operators. And the MEF approach to common modeling is starting to move us forward to unification and federation of the commercial networks. And for those of you who have followed what PCCW Global has been doing and what MEF has been helping the GLF do also, focusing also on the element of commercial settlement, perhaps leveraging distributed ledger, which is commonly referred to as blockchain. In a different model, it would look like this. There's been a good amount of collaboration, by various working groups in different industry forums and different organizations. The MEF common modeling approach, or the MCM, which exists in the middle around the APIs and Sonata, now has to go to a next stage, in our view. It has to start to move forward to a common modeling approach that will welcome, embrace, invite, and assure and encourage that all the different stakeholders are leading us not just to a technical interoperating environment, but also a commercial environment. This framework that you see with MEF that's doing services, the LSO APIs, community, and certification is the right platform to bring about the industry. As I said when we were waiting for the slides to change, the reason PCCW Global is so embraced to the ideas that MEF is because it is the perfect environment that combines every element of the community together. Putting the pieces together requires us to look not just at what was being discussed in terms of network-based service providers, but it requires this MEF community to expand to mobile operators, all of the cloud service providers, applications providers, and certainly the software vendors, and also some of the hardware vendors. To integrate these capabilities, in order to put all the pieces in place, we need to certainly bring the cloud service providers here. Why? Mobile network operators, domestic providers such as cable TV or fixed network service providers, or even mobile companies. As they move to interoperability, we need to go to that ICT ecosystem and not just be one network group talking to another network group. We need to be looking at the entire picture. And MEF is the right place in order to be driving those areas forward. Where are we now? We have here in this room mostly the telco and the M&O community that have done well with that top row, without a doubt. What do we need to do? We need to get the cloud community involved and really focus on the common modeling and the commercial settlement associated with the technical architectural structure of that common modeling. If you're going to do a technical interface without a thought process on how we're going to be automating the back end, we're going to have some challenges. And so we need to make sure that global networks and fabrics, domestic service providers, mobile operators, cloud providers, are all gathering together and transforming in an ICT community. Because what's coming forward, and Nan alluded to it, this massive 5G deployment, which we're already seeing in Asia, Korea, China, now Hong Kong, Singapore, and so on, massive fiber and 5G deployments will be driving IoT, and I think here is the use case to drive edge compute. Edge compute is a test for both the cloud platforms and the network service providers on how to interact and to monetize each other's capital base. Arguably, the cloud provider's capital base has been human capital as they've driven research and the ability to deliver on the software side of the business. And the network side capital base has been the investment in fiber and in 5G infrastructure. These two capital investments have to come together for that large base of industrial and enterprise users that I discussed before. Because also what's happening, this vast demand for data and for development and for bandwidth is also now being demanded for global geographic ubiquity. You can't have one set of arrangements in China, a separate set of arrangements in the United States, a separate set of arrangements in Africa. There's going to have to be clarity on how all of these things are done. All of these environments, the clouds, the networks, the technologies, the applications, and operations, automated back-end operations, together with commercial settlement capabilities, are going to have to bring together the different modeling environments. I talked about the MEF, but there's also others. These new cloud information models, where AWS, Salesforce, for example, have come together with Linux, Microsoft, SAP, and Adobe, the GSMA, TM Forum, GLF, TIP from Facebook, everyone's coming together with these new information models. But it's critical that MEF sit at the top, embrace these other organizations, and figure out how we can deliver interoperability, common view to technologies and infrastructure, and also the commercial settlement. And I ask, is there a common information model? And if there is, I think it's incumbent on the people in the room here, many of you from the technical side, to force product behavior, to force your organizations to also think through how we as an ICT community, and not just the network community, work together in order to develop a common information model that will facilitate interoperability, that will facilitate technical interoperability, settlement interoperability, and obviously a technology interaction that makes sense. PCCW Global wants to thank all of you, the MEF community. I want to echo again Mike Stropel's comments at the beginning. We do our best as a relatively smaller carrier in the room to invest our human manpower in what takes place in MEF. We applaud the work, but we believe there needs to be more, and we want to appeal to all of you to get engaged and to bring those that you know, not just in your own company, but within the industry. And if you're on the technical side, bring with you, please, someone from the commercial side of the business, from the back-end side of the BSS environment, who will be able to facilitate that automation and will be able to marry what takes place inside the retail environment of your network to what needs to take place to the entire ICT community. Because if you can show me a customer that today only uses one network and one cloud and one application, I'll find you a customer that hasn't grown yet. In fact, the more we can find this common approach, working together to deliver it, embrace the mobile community, embrace the cloud community, and deliver this interoperability, we'll be better off. PCCW Global team thanks MEF, and I personally want to thank the PCCW Global team who are here, who are engaged with MEF and who are engaged with our network on a daily basis. They work under sometimes very stressful conditions in Hong Kong, and I salute them all. Thank you very much.